got all of our directors and our staff and a group of attendees. So I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. Welcome. Good afternoon. I call this Iowa City Community School Board meeting on Tuesday, April 28th, 2020 to order. My name is Janet Godwin. I want to thank those on Zoom for joining us tonight. Introductions, we have Superintendent Steve Murley, Directors Lisa Williams, Paul Ressler, Sean Eyestone, Ruthina Malone, JP Clausen, Charlie Eastham, and Kim Colvin, Recording Secretary. Members of the public wishing to comment during the public comment may do so by using the raise hand feature to indicate a desire to speak during the comment period. When the meeting host has authorized you to speak, you will need to accept the request to activate your microphone, at which point you will have up to 4 minutes to address the board. Please remember to state your name prior to speaking. There will be a timer on screen when you address the board. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting during the community comment section of the agenda. But first up, we have our student representatives, and I apologize, folks, I don't have the agenda right in front of me. Can someone who does tell me who's going first?
Actually,
Sure.
we need those students to raise their hands.
Yes.
Okay. So who's up? Is it, okay, let's start with Mira. No, wait, yes, we've got Valerie and Mira. Let's start with Mira. We'll go to Valerie next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to speak tonight. It's really great to see all of you, and I always really look forward to coming to these meetings, so I'm glad I got to do it now. City High is, I assume everyone is doing okay. I've been hearing from a lot of different students about what they've been up to, especially through the paper. We have a lot of things still in the works, and I think a lot of students are trying to make the most of this time and really appreciating the opportunities they've been given for academic activities and different things, different ways we're connecting together. I've myself have had several really productive meetings with teachers over Zoom, so that's been really helpful. We do have a few things that have been really exciting of late. First of all, we have a couple of student awards. Miriam Abuisa and Joseph Bennett, who are both seniors, were named Governor's Scholars. And I myself was named one of the top 10 students in Iowa by the Des Moines Register, which was really exciting. Ellis Chen and Simon Weiss advanced to the semifinals in the Tournament of Champions. And then just a few other interesting things that are going on at City High right now. The newspaper is currently working on printing another edition along with our special environmental magazine, and is also working on the Senior Salute, which is a yearly magazine that the paper puts out for seniors, talking about senior superlatives and where people are going, just fun stuff like that. And I'm really excited that we're continuing these traditions on. I think it's really important, especially in this time, to do things that are fun and that will be interesting to people and that can kind of keep us all connected in that way. So those are just some things that are going on at City right now that I thought you'd be interested in.
Mira, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's really great to hear from you and hear about what's going on at City High. Congratulations on your honor, along with all the other honors from City High students. Hope y'all are hanging in there. I know this is really a hard, stressful time, but just know you're doing great work, and we're here supporting you. And it's really, really good to hear your voice tonight. So thanks for joining us. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So Valerie from Tate.
Hello, I'm Valerie. I'm a senior. I've talked to several students about how they're holding up during quarantine, what kind of classes they've decided to take, and how they want to continue with their education. Many of them have expressed concern with online classes, especially those with auditory processing disorders, ADHD, pre-existing mental conditions that make it difficult to work at home. Students that have to share computers with siblings, another family, or students with unreliable internet are having lots of difficulty. And a couple of my friends have been working 2 jobs to support their family during this time, which makes them unable to continue with their classes, and have decided usually just to take a pass, or maybe even take another trimester next year. However, some of the juniors who are not under as much stress have really appreciated this break, as they can think more about their future and how they want to continue. Other than that, a lot of people are bored, but are happy to be home.
Thank you, Valerie. And want to wish you the best as well and your classmates. Thank you for that very candid feedback on how your classmates are doing. We'll be talking later tonight in our board meeting about updates on our teaching and learning, as well as other things that we're doing in the district to support students and everything that we're doing. And so that feedback is really, really helpful, especially coming from you. So want to thank you for joining us tonight and being very candid about your experience. And just want to send our support to you as well in these challenging times, and hope you're hanging in there. So thanks again for coming tonight.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, looks like next is West High.
Hello. I'm Aditi. I'm a junior at West High this year. And firstly, I just wanted to say that I hope you're all doing well and staying safe and healthy and being able to find some sort of peace in this crazy time. So despite the school cancellations and these weird unprecedented times, West has been trying to do their best to keep school spirits up, as well as try to do their part for the community. While all sports and most clubs have been entirely canceled, this isn't the case for the West High Math Club, as we do have some exciting news to share as well. West High Math Club won the state championship last Friday, April 25th, through virtual Zoom, of course, and they became state championships for the 16th consecutive year in a row, as well as for the 21st time in the event's 22-year history. Additionally, the West Side Story, West High's student-led news publication, are also trying to continue their endeavors through online and broadcast media. Just last Friday, West Side Story actually distributed their latest edition of the West Side Story print to the doorsteps of families who had requested home delivery, following all safety precautions, of course. Additionally, the paper was also distributed through lunch distributions at various schools. West Side Story has also won over 60 individual awards from IHSPA, Iowa High School Student Press Association. They swept first, second, and third places in the state in over 6 different categories, as well as 2 staffers were also named second place Photographer of the Year and Writer of the Year. Additionally, 8 West Side Story staffers were also named Emerging Journalist finalists based on the quality of their work, as well as the impact it has on the school and community. Additionally, Cadenza, West High's classical music club, has been planning a virtual concert for early May titled United in Isolation, in hopes to keep school spirit up, as well as to serve as a fundraiser for several different relief funds. Personally, after being on several school class Zooms, it's pretty clear to see what the student response has been, and it's been fairly mixed, as many students are fairly uncertain about what the future looks like, which is given considering the circumstances. And I know a lot of them are feeling bored and restless and sort of uncertain as to what's to come next. And I know many are facing sort of difficulty trying to keep up with school, especially given the circumstances, as some of them have to work jobs, as previously mentioned, or have to take care of family members, maybe don't have the best access to continue their education. But I know the whole West High community is trying to do their best and stay well in these times. That's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditi, and thank you for giving us the updates from West High and talking about what it's like to kind of keep going as a school in the midst of these crazy uncertain times, and I think we all appreciate how difficult it is, and are trying to do things, and your feedback again is helpful. All of your feedback has been helpful as we try to figure out next steps going forward. And again, just knowing we're supporting you all and doing the best we can to keep things going. And thank you for the comments tonight and joining us. We have Ryan Eyestone up next. And Ryan, you want to give us an update from Liberty?
Not sure if you guys can hear me. Again?
Kind of breaking up, bud.
Am I? I'm not really getting anything.
I can hear you now, man.
Yep.
You guys can hear me? All right. This is Ryan Eyestone. So a lot of our teachers have been reaching out to us. They've all been saying that they miss us students and they want to get back in the class hopefully as soon as they can to then see our faces and just let us know that everything is okay and all that. A lot of students are also missing each other, which I've heard from many other people. And one way that people are trying to break that barrier of social distancing is that people are meeting up in their cars in the parking lots in different places and just sitting in their cars and just talking with each other, which is kind of a smart way so then they can see different people, but then they're still staying they're 6 feet away from each other. Liberty, the athletic booster club has been getting donations to give out class of 2020 signs to put out in people's yards to show support for people that are graduating this year, as well as other businesses and places are doing those signs as well, giving out to all of the graduating class this year. And one more thing, our choir had to submit video recordings of us singing the alma mater so then we could virtually put those in a video to send out to the faculty and the staff and all the students to let us know that this too shall pass. And that's all I have for you guys tonight.
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate your updates from Liberty, and also sharing how classmates are trying to find ways of getting together and providing, support. And so I've heard people say social distancing is actually not a great word because we all need to socialize to some level. So it's sort of like physical distancing, not social distancing. So it's really great to hear how students are being creative to find ways to get together and talk and support each other. So, and it's great to hear how Liberty is continuing to do good things in the midst of, school closures and everything being online. So thank you for the update, and thanks to all the students again for being here tonight. And for sharing your stories and giving us feedback. And just want to know, again, just hang in there. And we're going to do everything we can to support you throughout all of this. So thank you again for joining us. And it was really, really, really great to hear your voices tonight. I really do appreciate y'all joining us and sharing. Okay, thank you all. We'll move to community comment portion of our agenda, and I would open it up to attendees. If you wish to speak in community comment, please use the raise hand feature. Is there anyone online on our attendees who wishes to address the board in community comment? I'm looking for the little raised hand sign. Seeing none, we apparently don't have any community comment, but I'm really thrilled that we have the capability, folks. So this is great that we've brought this online for our board meetings. It feels good this actually feels like a little bit about us getting back to normal a little bit. So appreciate all the district team members who helped us bring this capability back to our board meetings. And so I will move into agenda approval for the night. Is there a motion to approve our meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Kim, we're ready to vote. Yeah. Kim, are you muted?
Online voting is open.
Thank you.
Kim, I'm going to vote yes. I'm still having that logon issue.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you, Kim. Move to consent agenda. I know Sean and Ruthina both had questions that were answered in terms of bill review. Are there other comments on the bills for this period or any agenda items directors would like to pull from consent agenda?
I would like to pull the RAM model.
Okay, that is number 10. Any others? Okay, is there a motion to approve our consent agenda without item 10?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open.
I'm voting yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you, Kim. Item 10, Paul.
Well, mainly I'm just curious if we absolutely need to approve this today. I know that some of us wanted to have a bigger discussion on this and it never has really happened. So that's just my first question, I guess.
I would be interested in that discussion also.
So I'll jump in and then I'll let Amy chime in on it. So if you recall, our last conversation about this was that we were going to hold our staffing status quo until we got a better handle on where the budget was going to be moving forward for next year. So what we did in this model was simply take all of our Power School numbers for grades 1 to 6 for next year, duplicated our grade 1 numbers and put them in as our placeholders for K. And the intent behind this was really to provide Amy and the elementary principals, coupled with the HR department, at least a ballpark for where staffing might sit if things remain status quo for next year. So more than anything else, really give them an opportunity to determine if there are openings that need to be posted, and if so, to move forward with those. Certainly lots of flexibility for the board to come back and look at this as we move forward, whether it's looking at changing funding or whether it's looking at specific changes to the framework of the RAM model. Amy, I'll let you jump in and add anything that's else that's germane there.
No, I don't have a lot to add versus, when we did share this back with the elementary principals, we talked about just that FTE pretty much is remaining flat for next year, even though I know it's showing a little bit differently there. We currently have 359 FTE in our buildings. And so you're seeing that that sheet is projecting 357 FTE. The thing that we also shared with them, like Steve alluded to, as we move closer to the new school year, what we have shared with them is that if at all possible, where we would add FTE back would be at RAM level 5 with those, where those kindergarten ratios are at right now, and we consider bringing them down to RAM level 4 kindergarten numbers. So that's where the conversation has been recently, but we wanted to put this in board docs tonight so that you know, everybody was well aware of how we were trying to staff right now.
So I guess I have a question. To do that work, Amy, in terms of the planning and the staffing, do we need to approve this model tonight, or can you do that without board approval of the RAM model? Or, you know, to the point, you know, obviously budget and things like that are a consideration for us, and if there are impacts in RAM if we change that. But I'm just curious, does this action only allow you to move forward, or can you do that work without this board action tonight?
I think we can continue to move forward. I think the reason why we would want you to formally approve it is if we find ourselves as we move forward the next few months, after we get through settling with our various groups, that we're not in a position to add back, that everybody's fully well aware of what class sizes, you know, are looking like. So it's just a nod to not only to the board, but to the public, to our staff, the position that we were finding ourselves in, and just want to be transparent about that.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
Amy, as I understand it, the approval of this model at this time would not preclude the district from addressing class sizes that are larger than projected or anticipated at this point, which was, I think, in part what we heard about this year. Am I okay in that assumption?
I think I'll kind of take that in two parts. So what we would try to hold true to is as we moved into the school year and our enrollments were becoming more crystallized, we would still try to keep everybody, in those RAM ratios. So if more students appeared, it doesn't mean that we would stay with the 357. We could be increasing just to even keep in those current ratios, or those current, with those current ceilings in place. I think the thing that we're curious about is what will student enrollment look like? Are we going to see an increase? Are we going to see a decrease? Nobody really knows with the pandemic what might happen. Our best guess is this crystal ball that we have right now, just, you know, rolling kids up to the next level. So that's one ask I would have, is that we can at least adhere to the levels that we've prescribed on the paper right now, and we wouldn't be exceeding any of these levels. And our hope would be, if there were some additional dollars, that we'd go back and target kindergarten first at RAM level 5 to try to pull down to RAM level 4. When we ran that initially, that was projecting us to be around 371, if I'm looking at my notes correctly, 371 FTE. And we just didn't feel like we could add that amount of FTE right now with some of those other factors unknown.
Okay, thanks.
I guess I agree with Paul. I kind of would like to see a broader discussion. And I think where my head's at is that there's just so many uncertainties that we're not in a position where we can have an actual concrete discussion. And if we approve this tonight, I'd be concerned about the public misinterpreting that approval as this is how the RAM is going to be, this is how we're moving forward next year. Instead of what I think the intent is this is what it is for now. Let's see what happens in the next 2 months. And so that's my hesitation.
And I agree with you, Lisa, there. You know, I'm hesitant to vote yes on this for the same reasons. And, you know, we've heard a lot over the last school year from not only parents, but teachers, which is something we haven't necessarily heard in the past, a lot of talking about the desire to lower some of these class sizes. And that's just my feeling. If we approve this now without that discussion, then it will appear that we're just doing nothing really. I know the funding may not be there, but I really would like to have that discussion before moving forward.
I think those are fair concerns. Again, given the high degree of public input we've had on class sizes and the impact RAM models have on that. And so rather than not approving this, having a motion and not approving it, is there a way, again, I'm looking for some kind of procedural advice or direction, Kim, or from Steve, can we just not vote on this particular item tonight?
Yes.
Yeah,
You can
Janet,
table
there's-
it, and it gives you the opportunity, especially given where we're at with the budget right now. I'd suggest that you table it, and I only say indefinitely just because we're not sure when we're going to get some of those numbers.
Yeah.
And we'll have a little bit better idea of some of the expectations that we're going to have. We'll talk about a little later with our return to learn plan next year and the implications that might have on budget. So I'd suggest you table it indefinitely, and then as we get a little bit more concrete idea of where the budget stands for next year, we can bring you back some revised numbers. In the meantime, my suggestion would be that Amy continues to staff using the current ratios simply as a way to determine staff numbers for next year. One of the things that we want to make sure that we do, even though we're in this different environment, is if we've got folks that are retiring or leaving for other reasons, and we need to make sure that we're going through that process of filling those positions. If simply from a numerical headcount standpoint that Amy's looking at that idea of maintaining the number of teachers that we had last year and a relatively even balance with primary and intermediate, that gives her some direction for filling seats on the roster, if you're comfortable with that as a takeaway for us.
Yeah, I think the continued planning that Amy needs to do is important, Steve. But I do think we need, once we have a little bit more information coming in, we need to have a more robust conversation with you and the board to just make sure we're clear on the steps that we can or cannot take around RAM. So we're going to table item 10. Appreciate the conversation, folks. That was helpful, and I think a good way to keep moving forward on that matter. Okay, so we will now move into our public hearing portion of the agenda. Sean, you've got 4. Yeah.
Janet, just to be clear, does that need to be a motion to table that item and approve that way, or is it just a statement?
I don't know. It's a good question, Steve or Kim.
Actually, Janet, by making that statement, tabled it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Good question, Paul. Okay, now we will move to public hearings. The first up is the Lemmy Elementary School Modular Project. Sean?
All right. Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2020 Lemmy Elementary School Modular Project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on April 14th, 2020. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on April 15th, 2020. The district will receive bids on this project at 2 p.m. April 30th, 2020 at the Facilities Management Office located at 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa 52246. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on April 15th, 2020. Are there any questions from the board?
Yes. Given the pandemic, how will these bids be received?
Well, they have the option, Ruthine, of either deliver them just to the office, which most of them are doing, and then we just open them in an open room. But most of the contractors have the choice of either participating in the bid opening or just leaving the envelope.
So what happens if we get 10 or more bids and they all want to be in a room?
We have a large room. We'll spread them out.
Okay, thank you.
Any
I was
other
going to say,
questions?
Ruthine, I was just going to add, we could also consider doing it Zoom, somewhat like this. We've done some of our openings for negotiations in a public meeting. So Ruthina, it's a good thought. It is, and we need to be conscious of that. And so there's a way to have a public link for the public if they want to, and we could send a link to all of the bidders. It's just could be hard because of when the bids come in and then when we open the bids. And that might be that might be the challenge, but it's something we can think through.
Okay, thank you.
Chase, they could deliver their bids early, then all go to their Zoom links and we'd open them when everybody logs on. There's some logistics involved there.
All right. Are there any questions from the public? If so, you can use the raise your hand function.
Okay, I think that concludes public hearing on Lemmy Elementary School Modular Project. Next up is Northwest Junior High 10-plex Modular.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2020 Northwest Junior High 10-plex Modular Project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on April 14th, 2020. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on April 15th, 2020. The district will receive bids on this project at 2:30 p.m. April 30th, 2020 at the Facilities Management Office located at 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa 52246. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on April 15th, 2020. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Okay, thank you, Sean. That concludes the public hearing on Northwest Junior High 10-plex Modular. Next up is West High School Parking Lot.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2020 West High School Parking Lot Project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on April 14th, 2020. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on April 15th, 2020. District will receive bids on this project at 10 a.m. May 1st, 2020 at the Facilities Management Office located at 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa 52246. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on April 15th, 2020. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Okay, thanks, Sean. We'll move on to the last public hearing on the West High School Disqus project.
Okay, now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2020 West High School Disqus project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on April 14th, 2020. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on April 15th, 2020. The district will receive bids on this project at 10 a.m. April 30th, 2020 at the Facilities Management Office located at 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa 52246. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on April 15th, 2020. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
All right, thank you, Sean. That concludes our public hearings. We'll move into our discussions. First up is procedures for continuous learning update. Steve?
Yeah, so let me start with just a quick update from the state level. One of the things that I have the privilege of doing is serving on the Superintendent's Advisory Council. There's one representative from each of the 9 areas in the state. We had the chance to meet with Director Lebo today. The main topic of our conversation was the Return to Learn plan. As members of that council, we got a preview on it. They're going to be pushing that out to other groups across the state over the course of the next week. They hope to have the finalized version of that out to the districts as a whole next Monday. And then that would give us a much better idea of their expectations for those things that happen next. I will share just a couple of quick updates that came through as part of that process. We asked several questions about the August 1st start date, which I know is something that I've gotten inquiries about from people in town here. And the DE made it fairly clear that the intent of the August 1st start date was not to add additional days to school calendars for next year, but simply to extend schools the flexibility, if they chose to do so, to start their school year earlier. So whether you're a 180-day district or you're a 1,080-hour district, the expectation is that school hours or school days would remain the same next year, but you'd simply have the latitude to start those earlier. Just a couple examples, we had a couple schools that are on semesters at the secondary level, and they talked about the potential benefit of running their school such that the semester would end prior to the winter break. Also, a couple of them talked about running some longer breaks either in the fall or midwinter that aren't currently part of their schedule, but would give them the opportunity to bring students in early, which might give them the opportunity then to address learning gaps. I will share, which will not be an issue for us. It still will be a little bit at the secondary level, but primarily not an issue for us, and certainly not at the elementary level. Several of the districts that were present expressed significant concerns about heat in August and air conditioning, and so that was an opportunity for me to reflect on the gift that our community gave us through our bond and through the work that we've done through the facility master plan, that we've got all of our kids air conditioned. So if indeed we did want to make any flexible changes to the start of our school day, we'd at least have the ability to do so in climate controlled buildings. So again, there'll be a lot more information on that to follow when we get into next week. A reminder that we have until July 1st to complete that plan. And the DE has multiple areas within the plan that they will expect us to address our plans for our kiddos moving forward. But more to come on that. You'll likely hear more about that next Tuesday at the board meeting. And then we'll hopefully be able to give you some kind of timeline for when we'll actually have a plan in front of you to look at, and at the end give us that opportunity to meet that expectation of filing by June 30th. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the team, Amy and Matt and crew, to talk about our teaching and learning, and Chase and his team to talk about operations. So Amy and Matt, it's off to you.
Yeah, I'll jump in first here tonight. So thanks everybody. I was just sitting here reflecting on what our students had to say, and I think they did a nice job of being able to show us kind of the continuum of things we're hearing, from families and from students, and definitely respect and value what they had to say tonight about being stressed with things like jobs and stir crazy at home, and not knowing necessarily the right decision or how much to take on and some of that stuff. And so I think that emphasized a lot of the need for the plan that we delivered and that we implemented this week with a lot of choice for the kids involved there, and spoke to even some of the continued work we have to do around access and ability to engage kids in some meaningful learning here over the next few weeks. So we are day 2 into the required continuous learning model that we moved to with our high school credit bearing courses. Last week when we spoke, it's kind of amazing how fast things happen here in these week-to-week formats and how much we've done in a week's time. Every week we get together. But last Tuesday, we were just pushing out that survey to you all, or to all of the families in the district for those high school courses and which ones they were going to continue on. We got upwards of 75 to 85% of our students responding back to that survey, indicating which courses they were going to continue in. So for us, that was an extremely high rate of participation and feedback that we got from our kids. And so the ones we haven't heard from, we'll continue to reach out and try to get some information about their awareness around the learning opportunity that's out there, or the required learning that's being asked of them, and what choice they would like to make in that scenario, or what works for them in their situation right now. I think, on the internal side of things, we've been working with trying to answer teachers' questions around grading and what the instruction can or might look like in this type of environment, and then even starting some conversations on how to engage our kids in the fall. Of course, knowing that there's going to be this gap and what that looks like for students coming back into courses and some of those things. And so I think we feel good about it after a couple days, but it's relatively new. And so we'll continue to monitor it closely and see the participation rates we get from kids. I think even the students that talked here tonight showed, there's mixed kind of reviews on how many are engaging and in which classes and some of those things. So we know our numbers are a little bit different. We know students are taking advantage of different options at different times and works for them. But I think that was a key point that we really tried to account for and execute in this plan, was to give a lot of choice depending on their own situation. So I think with that, that's kind of the broad brushstroke overview. I know our next item is graduation, so we'll kind of come back to some of the conversation we had around that today and the last few days as well. But secondary wise, unless Diane or Adam have something to jump in with there, I'll kick it over to Amy with the elementary component.
I'm sorry, I just have a quick question related
Sure.
to the secondary side. Earlier tonight, we heard the Tate student mention that some of her classmates are sharing computers. Is there any way for us to reach out to Tate students to see if everybody has their own computer and not sharing with the younger sibling?
Yeah, I made a note of that here too, Ruthina, that I talked to Principal Browning and make sure we try to push out that device access request form again to them and make sure they're aware that, you know, we can get them a device if that's what's needed. So thanks for bringing that up.
Okay.
I think that was, you know, part of the issue there. You know, the access piece we know is still not all figured out for people. And so we'll continue to work on that. But yeah, definitely we'll push out some additional information surrounding that.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Ruthina, that was an interesting comment to me just because Tate's all secondary. So I assume that they all should have had their own device to start with. So somewhere along the way, something must have happened. But to start with, they should have had their own device, I'm assuming.
My guess is they're probably sharing with younger siblings, so they may be sharing with either junior high or more likely elementary kids who are trying to get onto Lexia and Dreambox. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, just making sure, you know, households, whether we start with this Tate students, that might be easier to filter down to
yeah, for them to get the receipt
siblings.
of the information, right? Yeah, they might have the device, but if they're the ones reading emails, then, you know, we just might need to say to them, hey, if your household needs another device, then complete this for a younger sibling or something that way. So,
exactly, yeah. So yeah, thank you.
Amy, you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. This week, we met with our larger elementary team of principals, instructional coaches, and teacher librarians to set kind of expectations moving forward for the next week. Last week, we had foreshadowed to them the opening of Goal 5, which is around reading and math workbooks. But prior to diving deep into that conversation with our team yesterday, we were able to share a document that has elementary teacher expectations that more closely or tightly align some expectations. A lot of these expectations sit in our teacher support site, but we're heavy on the classroom teacher side. And so what you see in that document that we released last night to staff was more explicit expectations for all of our teacher groups at the elementary level. We briefly reviewed our goals 1 through 4 with the team, and then we talked to them at length yesterday about the workbooks. So in that teacher support side, our teachers now have electronic access to what the workbook's going to look like when they arrive, hopefully both of them next week. The reading workbooks are here, and we're currently in the process of making a plan for distribution of those. Hopefully we'll be distributing both on the same day, but if not, we'll probably end up with 2 different dates for distribution. We have put together a set of assignments for each week, for each grade, for reading and math. We'll embed that in our daily schedule and do another release back to our families so that everybody's clear that we're still promoting Dreambox and Lexia at the elementary level, but that if they wanted to work out of reading and math workbooks, that they now have that option as well. The other thing that we did was to work on, and I can't take credit for this, I don't mean we, Andrew Fenstermaker has put together a nice Google Classroom where we're gonna take our staff through 6 different modules to have them become proficient in, and that will be the learning management system that we use next year at the elementary level. Currently, we have just a small percentage of our staff members using that, but we feel like we need to be prepping right now for potential future school closures, and this would provide a level playing field for everyone. And from there, then we would be in a better position to post content, videos, assessments. So not only are we able to do that and post on the teacher side, but then students would be able to post and share assignments back if we did end up in the scenario that we're currently finding ourselves in. And then we just talked to them about some odds and ends as we were closing out the year. So we tried to capture that kind of high level things that we talked about. Typically, we haven't been in the, we haven't been releasing back after that kind of large group meeting those items that emerged to our teacher group, we've allowed that building level team then to take it back through staff meetings or PLCs. But given the nature of how fast and furious things are moving in this new environment, we've just been reaching back to the teaching staff to give them a heads up. So there'll be some parent communication coming more towards the end of the week around the workbook distribution. With that, I take any questions that you have.
So, Amy, again, it's a great report. Marvelous, awesome work that all of you are doing. Very much appreciate it and support it. We would, I would still ask that, that as we continue to go along here, that we hear frank discussions of what's not happening as we would like it to happen. Participation rates clearly are something we have to, we're going to be all concerned with. I don't mind hearing about how that's working out, what we might need to be doing. Requests to the board, great things to be doing right now. And then there are other things, I'm not quite so sure, we have a clear idea about how we're going to measure instructional effectiveness through the rest of this year, possibly in the next year. So again, it's just a marvelous effort on your part, on everyone else's part. Still, as I think part of our board responsibilities is try to understand what we are, where we're not succeeding as much as we need to.
Yeah. Those are great questions, Charlie. The one thing I could share with you is we've seen another uptick in our usage of Dreambox and Lexia for our parents or students logging on. So that is, those percentages are going to be shared in this parent email as well. But with Dreambox, we went from 41% in March to 64% this last week. And then with Lexia, that usage has gone from, or students logging in from 26% at the end of March to 57%. So we continue to see an uptick, and we'll continue to plug it in our parent communication pieces. That's kind of our best way at the elementary level to know how students are engaging, at least with the products that we're trying to promote the most. We don't have, it's not required learning, so we're not taking attendance or things like that in any other fashion. It would be really hard for us to know how many students are engaging in any of the other student enrichment activities we have listed on that document. Of course, there's activities on that document that are technology and non-technology related. So I think for us, the best check-in is what that usage looks like. The other thing that we're monitoring is to get to those products, you have to go through Clever. And we know that Clever usage is even higher than what we see, or access is higher than we see for Dreambox and Lexia. So I think when I looked last, that Clever usage showed that 73% of our students had at least been in through the badge. That opens them up to a bunch of resources, not only Dreambox and Lexia. So when we see Clever being accessed at 73%, we know Dreambox and Lexia could at least be that high as well. So that's a little bit of window into maybe what we see our parents and our families partaking in this voluntary model.
Charlie, and I think one thing I think about with that you bring up that is, what are we worried about or what's not going well? And, I think there's just the reality of the situation right now that I think we all have some level of knowledge on that is different for everybody. But one thing we even talked about in our administrator meeting this afternoon is the worry of what happens in the fall. And, just from a system perspective, so students come back to class, and even though we've given them a pass or they've gotten credit for their third trimester course, they go into the next sequence in their course taking through high school or through junior high. And if they start to not have success in that course, what is the system's response to that? That's what we need to work on over the summer and helping our teachers with as we come into the fall, because the system's response can't be to shift them down to another course. And we know that structurally that'll happen to Black and brown kids more often than it will happen to all kids. And so I think that's the thing those are the things we have to pay attention to, is what does this situation do to affect our responses as we move forward, and how do we try to shield ourselves against where we know the system will produce the results it's designed to do. And if we don't do something different to get out ahead of that, then we'll continue to see some more systematic problems, for our most disadvantaged kids in that system. So those would be real transparent conversations I think we have to have about how are we going to be better positioned for the fall to protect ourselves against those types of things from happening.
I think too, Matt, to Matt's point about talking about courses at the secondary level, for us at the elementary level, it's not thinking that retention by any means is the answer for kids, having missed, several weeks of school at the end of this year. We've got to be prepared for that. And we talk too often about our multi-tiered system of supports. So not only is that going to become super critical, but also then just thinking about how we're going to be redoing pacing guides and things like that. What are those standards that we're going to leverage for the end of this year, and ask the teachers that are starting with those children next year to think about delivering, plus, redoing our pacing guides, because we're not going to be able to do it all. We can't fit in 10 weeks of school from this year plus next year all into 1 year's time either. We're going to have to make some hard decisions about those standards that are absolutely critical to have in front of our students and have them be proficient with.
Good. Thanks very much, both of you.
Thanks, Charlie.
I just want to add real quick that I appreciate the work you guys are doing, and you guys have heard me say this before, but I think the teachers and the families, there's a little bit of amount of stress out there as well. And I thought it was interesting today. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal about how some districts across the country are now ending their online learning early due to some of those factors. And so it'll be interesting to see how this first week goes for the high school level, and then the next week, and see how that turns out. But just from what I've heard from other parents and staff members, some people are doing a lot, some people aren't doing a lot. It's not necessarily bad either way. I appreciate what the teachers are doing, but that mental health, that stressor, all that stuff is real as we go through this. And so I just appreciate what you guys are doing and what teachers and staff are going through, and parents that are helping their kids. And this whole thing is crazy. And like I said to someone in an email, you can't just flip the switch and turn on online learning. This is kind of a learning thing for everyone. So hats off to you guys. And I'll just be interested to see how the secondary piece kind of goes this week and next week.
Paul, I appreciate that comment too. And I would assume that Synchrony is offering kind of telehealth sessions for our employee assistance program. And just a reminder that folks can take advantage of that.
Yes, JP, that's correct. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, nothing's ever perfect, by any means, but I do think that was, I think both those perspectives you guys just shared there, Paul, is an important one to consider, because our teachers or parents at home, they have their own situation at home too that they're trying to deal with, and then still continuing to try to provide instruction. And so I know there's been some, feedback about how much we're asking them to do, what are we asking them to do, but I think, we've tried to consider all of those options and recognize that this is different for them as well, right? And so this is a different stress point for them and for their family in that. And Brady's been great about bringing that to the table consistently and talking to us about that. What are reasonable expectations? Where's the right middle ground? And like I said, I'm not sure it's perfect, but at the same time, I think with trying to balance all of those pieces, we've come up with a good, system for that we can wait and try to monitor what's successful, what's not successful, what might we have to do again in the fall. But, I think we landed in a pretty good middle spot to try to balance all of those things and be respectful of the students, of parents, and of our staff.
Yeah, this is Brady. I'd just say on behalf of the teachers and staff, we're just very, very thankful for the support of the board, the understanding, the compassion, the empathy, and also the really good questions about effectiveness and engagement. And, we want to do this well. The teachers and staff have a very high amount of professional pride and integrity. And it's hard, trying to figure out what the right balancing act is, but the administration has been very inclusive, extremely collaborative. It's just a testimony to our strong partnership. And that also is a function of the board. So we, just thank you. And we're learning. We spent the day in my household, tomorrow's our teaching day for art and social studies at the secondary level. So we spent the day really trying to figure out what, that looks like, and then how you do effective follow-ups and how you judge engagement and how you provide feedback. And, we're teachers with, 24 and 27 years of experience respectively. So it's, we're using a lot of different platforms and, and trying to figure it out. And also to remember that students, as you heard tonight, I was so appreciative of those students, as were all of you, that they're in different places. And it's really hard to judge when you're remote. When you see them in class every day, they come into your room, you can see, I need to follow up. I need to touch base with the counselor. There's things going on. There are profound challenges, in the remote environment. So, but just my overall message is just thank you for the support and, and for the collaboration.
Yeah, and I think, just the feeling that I've got, I think students want to be in school, but some of these students, that online learning is just not an obstacle. It's just something they're not used to, and they don't necessarily feel as connected as they do in that classroom. So I know students are struggling that way a little bit too. So anything you guys are doing to help that, I really do appreciate that.
Thank you all. Thanks, Brady, for chiming in there and for the comments from our directors. Are we, anything else on the continuous learning update that we want to make sure to cover tonight?
Shannon, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm looking for a time to do this. It seems like we are contemplating a situation next fall where we may likely be asked to open the schools again. And that has its own learning challenges to it, but it also has health and safety challenges to it. It's to me, from what I understand, it's very unlikely that this virus is going to go away in the end of July. So I would like us as a board to have some discussion about the health and safety issues that we will be asked to deal with in August or September if schools begin again. I'm not sure this is a good time to do it, or if we should do that in agenda setting tonight, or do it next week when we meet again. But it's something I think I would like us to consider adding to our plate as a board anyway.
Charlie, I'd add that actually in the preview of the Return to Learn plan that we're going to be required to put together for the state, that is one of the 6 elements that they have in there right now. So we should have more guidance from them about expectations for what the plan will include from a content standpoint. Hopefully by the time we get to the next board meeting, I'll be happy to share that with you. And then I think part of our responsibility is going to be to go through that plan and go through each of those 6 elements, develop processes and protocols for next fall, bring that forward to you as a board, get your input on that, and then use that back and forth process to get the Return to Learn plan refined and ready for submission by the end of June. So I think you're going to find a healthy opportunity to talk about those health and safety aspects, and also back to what Brady and Matt were talking about earlier. One of the other components is the socio-emotional standpoint. So when we look at bringing students back, bringing staff back, those 2 things, the mental health and the physical health, are going to be key components of that Return to Learn plan. So I think we're going to see that on the board agenda on a pretty regular basis moving forward for the next couple months.
Thanks, Steve. I just would like to add here that frankly, the state's leadership in dealing with this pandemic from a health and safety aspect is not one that I've been impressed with. So as we go forward here in this district, I would prefer that we pay some attention to our own resources.
Steve, do you expect the state to give us guidance on things like that we have to address and Return to Learn around social distancing, for example? I mean, that obviously could have enormous impacts on our facility utilization.
I have a feeling that we are going to get some general guidelines from them, and then we are going to get a level of deference to local leaders making decisions within that framework. The questions that we were asking today of the DE, which they weren't able to answer, was essentially what will those parameters look like, and how tight will they be? At least as of today, they were either unwilling or unable to provide us with more detail on that. So I think when we see their framework next Monday, we'll know just how much local control they expect and what kind of parameters they will give us to consider when we think about our next fall and bringing our kids back. So we'll have a lot more information next Monday, but I guess at this point in time, I would tell you probably not to pin your hopes on some very prescriptive content from the DE in the state.
Okay, fair enough.
Hey, Steve, can you give us an update? Sorry if you guys hear honking. There's apparently a birthday parade going on in my neighborhood. If you can give us an update on when or what it looks like for students possibly to get recover items that are in the school. I know that was kind of mentioned a little bit in an email. And then also, will there be another chance for teachers to go back into their classrooms to get stuff? I know that when it originally happened, it was kind of that same, it was in that 2-week time frame of when spring break occurred, and some teachers took their own quarantine for 2 weeks, so they couldn't necessarily get into the classrooms, and now maybe they need some books or something to help doing the teaching. So is there any update to that you can give us?
Sure, I can turn that over to Chase. I'll tell you just real quickly, though, the plan actually is twofold. We've got several work projects that are going on inside buildings, and so we need assistance from teachers to keep those projects moving along. And so they're our first priority in terms of getting folks into the buildings to get some materials cleared out. And then not only do we have staff that need to get in there, but as you said, we also have students that need to get in there. One of the things, I know it sounds kind of strange from this standpoint, but we're already looking forward to the end of May and thinking about the normal end of year processes and procedures that we use to close out a school year, and recognizing that will be here before we know it. And so Chase and his team have started working on a schedule that will allow students and staff into classrooms to get materials cleared out. You want to give a little update on that, Chase?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Steve kind of gave a nice framework for that. The rest of this week and next week, we're working with specific buildings that are facing construction to focus there so that we can keep those projects on course. However, we've been working with a number of administrators and Brady in trying to gauge, what is that need right now for people to get into the building, and keeping in mind what Charlie just talked about, health, safety, and wellness of folks when they're in the building, and making sure that stays the priority. And so we are going to continue to allow access as requested for critical or crucial needs, but we're not at a spot where we're going to reopen the buildings. Paul, in terms of your specific question, what our plan is going to look like is something probably in the later half of May. Again, if there are things that are needed more pressing, we're willing to work with individuals and with individual buildings to get those, but trying to limit entry as much as possible. So as Steve said, looking at how can we retrieve materials and also kind of do that close down for the year at the same time. But we know there's other things that we also want to make sure that we get to our students. And so looking at those pieces somewhat separately, but in terms of that access piece, we'll probably come back with a plan in a couple of weeks so that families know when to expect being able to get access to get those materials. And hopefully they only have to come once, right? Get things they need for right now, but then also be ready for the summer and not coming back until August.
Any other questions on continuous learning or anything in this area? Going once, going twice?
Well, sorry, Janet, does that include the operation side, or are we coming to that next? I don't have the agenda pulled up.
All we have, we just have procedures for continuous learning update on the agenda. Yep. We don't have a line item for
operations would be next.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So Take it away, Chase.
I didn't mean to cut you off there, but actually, Paul beat us to the punch. That was one of our two things that we wanted to talk about, that we understand the access piece, but we are trying to balance health, wellness, safety. And be honest, we are going to err on the side of health, safety, and wellness as we go forward. And I'm happy to take questions on that. But right now, I'm going to turn it over to Allison to talk about the continuation of our meal program.
Thank you. Good evening. It's been a busy week. If you remember, at this time last Tuesday night, right at the end of the meeting, we talked about the need to move out of West High. So that happened Wednesday morning. At the same time, we had some posts on social media starting Tuesday night and through Wednesday that caused some significant increases in our numbers. So for example, from Tuesday to Wednesday last week, we served over 2,100 more meals. And if we look at the totals at the end of the week, if we look at the totals from the week of the 20th through the 24th versus the 13th through the 17th, we saw about a 40% increase with serving over 9,000 more meals in that time period. So we always welcome the increases. We're doing our best to stay ahead of that and make sure that we have everything we need to keep the meals coming. And at this point, we're keeping up, but it just was a busy week. But we are back at West as of Monday, yesterday, and our numbers have continued at that higher level. So for example, today, we served almost 7,500 meals just today. So we're keeping busy.
It was the popcorn chicken wrap.
That was today, yes.
But I know that, I know I misheard something at last week's meeting. I corrected that, but the biggest thing that people took away is that the FRL piece. A lot of families thought that it was only for free and reduced lunch. And in my communication, it's, you know, whoever needs it, because food budgets, I know even for me, my food budget, I don't know what that is anymore, with having everybody home. And so families that traditionally wouldn't think to use it, they're like, wait a minute, I can use it even though I don't qualify. So I think we might see high numbers for the rest of the year.
Absolutely. And I think that's awesome that families are getting that message. We have tried to give that message from the beginning, but I'm glad that that is getting out there. And obviously, as time goes on, families might have increased needs for a lot of different reasons. So we're happy to provide those meals.
Allison, do you know what the, oh, go ahead. Okay, I was just wondering if we knew what the tipping point was where the numbers get too big, or anywhere in ballpark.
I don't know. I'm not sure. We're just going to keep putting our head down and doing our best every day so that we get that done. So, you know, if you compare what we're doing now to a regular school day, our numbers look lower, but it is far more labor intensive to individually bag all these items. So you are correct. There certainly would be a tipping point at some point. I'm not sure what that is, but we just continue to do the best we can every day and keep moving forward.
Yeah, Allison, just a quick question, because a couple of people asked me about it, but it looks like the Coralville Community Pantry is kind of teamed with you guys on some weekend stuff, maybe last week, and so there was a little bit of confusion on someone was like, this is what I got at my meal at Northwest, and then someone else was like, I didn't get that. So, but that's just happening at Northwest and West from what I understand, and you could just clarify that for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm probably not the best one to ask about that, but I do know that we have worked with different community partners for, I think initially it was Operation Backpack on Fridays. Chase probably knows a little more, and we're happy to hand out whatever people bring us. And so I know at West, or actually it was Borlaug on Friday, there was a little electric toothbrush in there. So the word spread quickly. We had people pulling up wanting to know if they could get a toothbrush in their weekend bag. So I'm not really sure. I'm sure the bags differ, but I'm not sure where all they come from. Maybe Chase can answer that better than I.
I don't know if I can answer it better. I think Allison's right. We're very thankful to our community partners. Laura Daly and Kareem Frank have been helping us organize with those different food pantries that want to provide those on a Friday. And so, Paul, it has kind of varied, but it's been nice for us to continue our meal service as set from the district, and then allow them to provide the back snacks or the backpack food items for over the weekend. We are trying to systematize it. And so if there are organizations out there that want to do that, they can contact Kareem Frank or Laura Daly or even me, and we can try to work something. We do have some guidelines, as Allison reminds us, that we need to abide by. And so if we can set those programs up centrally to be able to do that, we want to do whatever we can to partner to help make sure that we provide food for kids during the week, and then also try to find ways for them to get food for over the weekends as well. So we're very thankful for those partnerships that have helped us do that.
We always see a high participation on Friday, and I'm assuming that some piece of it is that weekend backpack.
Okay, Janet, those are our two operations items for this evening.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Chase. Appreciate it. And appreciate all the hard work from everyone involved. Are we ready to move to the next item on graduation?
We are. Matt's going to cover that.
Okay.
All right, guys. Yes, so for graduation, we've been talking the last couple of weeks about what to do with graduation. You know, obviously it's been, we were not going to be able to hold it at Carver Hawkeye Arena once the closure of the university buildings took hold. So we've been talking about alternative options, and what the team is really recommending and what we're going to commit to doing is making a decision about a graduation by May 29th and kind of going forward with one of two different options at that point. And some of this is based on parent feedback. We've heard some feedback from students, and then the high school administrators really working collaboratively together on this. So by May 29th, we'd like to communicate out to families that we'll either be able to proceed with an in-person graduation and a face-to-face experience, whether that's on one of our, in one of our football stadiums, or whether that's a different location in the municipal area. We will continue to look and work at what options could be for that. If we're not able to do that because of the health pandemic and social distancing guidelines and the ability and need to keep everyone safe, then we'll move to a format that would have kind of a multifaceted approach here. One with an opportunity for students and their families to get a picture in their cap and gown, receipt their diploma, do that somewhere on the campus they're graduating from, and really do that as like a kind of a drive-through experience. We've seen this in a couple other parts of the country, and obviously we're in communication and trying to look for good ideas. I think about Liberty's campus and how they could pull in and have students get out, receive their diploma, walk, get their picture taken under the scoreboard, get back in the car, and drive on through. And so that's a rough, concept of what it would look like on one campus. Obviously we're still working on finer details of that. And I know saying that out publicly will have a lot of people asking a lot of questions around what all of those things would look like. But I think we at least want to give people a flavor of what we're thinking about and thinking through. I think with that feedback that I said we tried to seek out from some parents and some students, there was really this desire to hold on to the opportunity about potentially having an in-person graduation as long as we can, and trying to wait to see to make that decision that maybe that could happen sometime during the summer for us, while also recognizing the need that people need to know at some point. And so if we're not able to commit to doing that by May 29th, then we'll have some experience that will be significant for them. And I think the other thing we've talked about doing is how do we compile that in a kind of a video montage, with pictures of kids and with the graduation speeches taped and put together. So there's some kind of a takeaway and a package of an experience too, that wouldn't just be the 400 individual student experiences. They get through some type of a drive-through experience type of thing. So those are really the two options we're considering heavily, and we would like to, like I said, let our families know by the 29th of May which of those options we'll be pursuing, so so that we can either start to lock down a date for when an in-person graduation would occur, or when this other experience would happen. So I'm sure you have a thousand questions about details of what that would look like in that piece. And unfortunately, I don't have a ton of specifics, but I do think we have agreement in concept among our 3 comprehensive high schools and our alternative high school, Tate, that those would be the options we would pursue. So I'll take any questions you might have that I'm able to answer, but some other ones I'm just going to be honest with you, I might have to just take to the team, and we'll have to keep thinking about and working on as we get closer to this.
I appreciate the update, Matt. I actually really hope something, because this is you know, a milestone for a lot of kids and families. It's a memory that, you know, I hope that they are able to experience in one way or another, even though it may be a strange experience. But I really hope that we are able to do something, because like I said, I think it's an important milestone in a child's life and in a parent's life. So I appreciate you guys are working on it. I'm more than happy to offer my assistance in any way possible. So I appreciate that you guys are doing it.
Thanks, Paul. And we definitely see the need, you know, that this is one of those big life events, and this is their one shot at their experience to get to do that. And so we definitely want to take heed of that and provide the best experience we can under whatever conditions that we might be subjected to for them.
Appreciate that, Matt.
No questions, Matt. I thanks for the update. You're being really thoughtful. I did want to give a kudos to whoever's idea it was to get the signs for the seniors. I helped Jason distribute some signs.
Nice. Good,
Friday. For city, their signs look great. There's a Liberty sign across the street from me. That looks great. I think it seems like a really nice gesture of something that we can do for the seniors to kind of recognize them in this unique situation they're in. So whosever idea that was, you know, pat on the back for them. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's been a lot of these, you know, we could pass credit around all over the place. You know, I think we've had a lot of different good ideas come from different places. I do think this one started on the east side of town with John a little bit on the yard signs. And then, you know, Scott's got them going at Liberty. And then Greg has also been pursuing this. And so I think we'll have them across the district. We've even had the conversation today about making sure TSC students get those. So thanks to Lisa and her team about, you know, making sure we account for everybody in that scenario. So a lot of good thoughts. We want to take care of kids, give them whatever experience we can, and try to highlight that. So thanks for sharing that, Lisa. I think that's been a nice feel-good thing that we've been able to see too, even walking through our neighborhood.
And Tate too, right?
Yep. We'll make sure. Yep. I just didn't list them off, but.
I have a question. I kind of got an answer locally at Liberty where my kids were at, and I was kind of curious as to how it was playing out at the district-wide level. But, you know, we got an email from the counseling office just with some updates there, and they talked about making sure anybody who had sheets for silver cord were getting them turned in. And my wife and I had been talking about that prior to that email, and we were kind of questioning, you know, a lot of the places where kids go and volunteer, like assisted living places and things like that, you know, they're not allowed to go in there. And this may go on for months where they're just not allowed to volunteer for anything. And so I was kind of asking the question, was there going to be some sort of reduction in, you know, the number of hours? And they said that they had a meeting and talked about it, that they were going to be more lenient with that, whatever that means, right? And I don't know if that's been talked about at a more district level. I wasn't clear when I got the answer from our own counselor. So I was just kind of curious, has there been more district-wide talk on something like that?
I would say not specific to that item yet, Sean, but I would say our team's trying to be really collaborative in how we think about these different components as we go throughout. And that's, you know, something we continue to try to engage in as these issues come up, to try to look at them from a team approach so that we don't have somebody doing something very different than another campus. And so silver cord hours, while that's kind of a building level decision as far as how they decide to award some of those components, we will talk about that as a team and make sure that, you know, that's a list or an item on our list to have the conversation about, make sure we develop some consistency around.
Okay, I appreciate that. I mean, I was thinking about it in terms of this year's seniors who may have like been on track, you know, the last couple months of the year to
Yeah,
finish
no,
up.
they don't have it. Yep.
And maybe they can't. But also with juniors, right? I know my kids, right? They get a lot of their hours in the summer, and if this summer, the last summer that you know juniors were planning on before graduation, kind of wipes out any opportunities, that could be a big chunk for them. I think most freshmen and sophomores probably will have time to catch up because I assume this will be over with at some point in time. But it was just thoughts I was thinking, and I kind of got that local perspective and kind of wanted to see the more district-wide. So I appreciate that.
Yep. Thank you.
Hey, Matt, one more quick thing on graduation. I think it was the West Side Weekly that I was reading. It was talking about handing out their cap and gowns. Maybe it was Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Can you just update us? Is that the plan for all the high schools, or is there some sort of plan for the high schools to distribute those? And then if someone doesn't come to pick them up, will there be an opportunity to get them to the individuals?
Yeah, I was trying to pull back up my email around that, Paul, to see what the exact schedule was when you started saying that. But we do have a time that was sent out to the affected families around cap and gown distribution. And so there's about a 2 or 2.5 hour window for each school where they can come and pick those up. If they're not able to come at that time, then they just need to contact their building principal, and we'll work to get those distributed to them. For Tate, Principal Browning will be communicating out her own schedule because they usually do cap and gown distribution a little different. And so she'll be working with her families on that piece as well. But if you give me a second, I could pull up the exact schedule, or we can come back to it. But
Matt, it was in Kristen's email on the 24th, and to senior families. So City High was Thursday the 30th from 7:30 to 10. Liberty High that same day on the 30th from 2 to 4, and West High on the 1st of May from 8 to 10:30. And we could probably put that out again just as a reminder.
Yeah, we can push that out again. That would be good because we'll make a note to do that, to keep pushing that one out. We want them to have that opportunity. So that was a big stress point for a lot of our parents. They really wanted to make sure their kids could get in access and get those caps and gowns. I know a lot of them had still some pictures arranged or some opportunities they wanted to take advantage of. So we tried to turn that around quickly. All right, that's all I had for the graduation item. Then thanks guys for your patience on that, and for hearing us out on what that plan will look like. And we'll continue to provide more details as we have them.
Sounds good. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Next up, Patel update.
So I've had some conversation with the folks at Patel. Obviously, we've got nothing going on here this spring, so we're looking forward to next fall. The conversation right now is about restarting the process. I shared with the cabinet team that obviously only having done one session, and that session really being focused on what does the future of the world of work and the world of education look like. Things have changed a little bit since that first meeting, and so we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to re-engage the community, start that process over again. My concern right now is that we've got not only the work that they were doing in various districts around the country this spring, anything they might have been doing this summer that might also be untracked, and then obviously they were already starting to book for engagements this fall. So I want to make sure that we get on their agenda, and that I've proposed that if you remember, we had a 4-week intersession in order to get some work done and get some engagement with the community. My proposal is that they try to compress that to a 3-week intersession so that we can start the process in September, but be ready to provide the board with a report in December. So we're waiting for them to take a look at their calendar. They didn't want to make any commitments just yet, but see if we can get that process more firmly committed to on their behalf so that we're ready to get going when the fall starts.
Okay.
Questions that I can answer.
Yeah, I know. What was just going through my head is, of course, you know, we're all trying to plan for all these different contingencies, and you know, the Patel work had 150 people gathering and doing a lot of, you know, ideation, workshop-y stuff, and you know, we're just going to have to wait and see if we're able to have gatherings of that size starting in September. And so I'm hopeful that they're considering those kinds of factors when they're thinking about getting their process being able to re-engage with us.
They have been, and that's actually part of the reason why they're not willing to make any commitments just yet, because they're waiting to see. They actually had a conversation with me along the lines of, are they going to have to start looking at some type of virtual engagement if they can't do a physical engagement? And so that's some of the contingency planning that they're looking at on their end. And I think one of the reasons why they didn't want to make any commitment to us just yet.
Okay, very good. Other questions from directors? Hearing none. Okay, we'll move into our action item for the night, the non-exempt pandemic pay resolution. I think this is an extension, is it not, of one we already had in place?
That is correct. It is resolution number 3, and this will take us through the end of May, but it is the exact same resolution the board has graciously passed twice already, but we kept putting a sunset on it so the board can come back in case there's anything we want to do different.
Yep, fair enough. Any questions from directors on this action item? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the non-exempt pandemic pay resolution?
I move we approve the non-exempt pandemic pay resolution.
Second.
Thanks, Charlie. Any further comments, questions? Hearing none, Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open.
Kim, I'm voting yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Okay, so we're moving into agenda setting. Let's see, we have an exempt session on the 5th of May, followed by a special board meeting, which will focus on our COVID-19 response planning with a communications update, teaching, learning, technology, long-term planning, an operations update, facilities, nutrition services. We'll have an update on personnel and staffing. Can someone remind me what that item is? Steve?
I'm looking at it right now. I'm wondering if that's a carryover.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one's going to come off.
Yep. Sorry, I had to look at another agenda just to try to compare them with each other.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you. So this is again a special board meeting really focused on COVID. Is there any other activity or discussion the board needs to have on the 5th? Okay, Ruthina reminded me that there is a P&G meeting scheduled for the 11th of May.
Yep.
And that will go forward. So here, is there anything else directors would like to talk about in terms of agenda setting for the next couple weeks? Okay, I think our business is done tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Janet, before we adjourn, can I just make a quick comment? Because we approved it and I meant to say it when we did, but I just wanted to welcome the 2 new principals that we hired this year, Debbie Bennett and Tracy Morrison, to the staff. It's usually a major thing when we do that, and I just totally forgot to say that at that time, so I just wanted to congratulate them.
Yay, congratulations to both. And,
Yeah, I share that. Thanks for bringing that up, Paul.
Yep, thanks, Paul. Yeah, yeah.
happy to see that our Grow Our Own program is working.
Yeah, right. It's really good.
And to Allison Brewer for the assistant principal at West too. So.
Yep.
Right.
Good call outs, folks. Appreciate that. Anything else? Going once, going twice. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, JP. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Good night, everyone. We'll log back into our closed session here momentarily.
Oh yeah, we have another one.
We have another one. We'll see y'all soon. Thanks.